New efforts by U.S. law enforcement to make Russian oligarchs feel the pain of Putin's war.
Friday, Italian authorities in the port of Trieste seized the ship known as Sailing Yachty, worth about $578 million, belonging to Andrei Melnichenko.
We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for you, ill-begotten gain.
I use open source techniques to track Russian oligarchs' vessels. I think I have 25 just of the main ones, the ones with the biggest yachts, but there are so many.
For decades, these oligarchs have sheltered their extraordinary and in some cases stolen wealth outside of Russia in secret accounts and by acquiring vast amounts of real estate and other assets like yachts and private jets.
I've been trying to help getting the pressure up and moving the public towards pressuring the governments to act. I do OSINT, which stands for Open Source Investigations, and in this specific case and period, I'm trying to track Russian oligarchs' yachts and vessels and boats. It's hard for me not to feel strongly about what's happening in Ukraine.
Ukrainian officials say Russian forces bombed a theater used as a shelter in Mariupol.
Intentionally targeting civilians is a war crime. After all the destruction of the past 3 weeks, I find it difficult to conclude the Russians are doing otherwise.
I've always been actually sort of a fan of Russia. I love their culture. Unfortunately, I also hate what the Putin regime has been doing to it. And obviously, seeing this absurd war, it's hard to stand still and do nothing. So I've been attempting to focus my skills into what I thought it would be, at least at some level, impactful.
Some of these yachts can take millions of dollars a month just to maintain, and they have to be maintained to preserve their value.
Boats are enormous amounts of money. As opposed to stocks, they are hard cash. Their value is not going to go down all of a sudden as the stocks of their company. A bank account can be frozen. A villa in the French Riviera can be frozen, but a yacht can be stored in a safe harbor. If I have an $800 million boat in Dubai, I know that even in worst case scenario, I can get $400 million cash. So it's a rather important mean of preserving their fortune.
Putin is thought to be one of the richest men in the world, but proof is hard to find on paper, while the Kremlin claims he makes around $140,000 a year. Experts believe he's worth billions and say that his real wealth is hidden in the accounts and assets of his oligarchs.
I have been tracking Putin's yacht since 2016.
This is what the Graceful looks like inside. There's a pool that can be converted into a dance floor, an elevator. That's Putin's stateroom with a huge king-size bed.
It usually stays in the Black Sea during the summer, and it used to travel back to the Mediterranean Sea for maintenance, either in Barcelona or Malta. This year, instead, it headed to Hamburg in September, and while there was all this discussion about the crisis,
we continued to see signs of Russian escalation, including new forces arriving at the Ukrainian border. As we've said before, we are in the window when an invasion could begin at any time, should Vladimir Putin decide to order it.
Something strange that happened is Putin's yacht was brought out in a hurry, and it sailed rapidly towards the closest Russian waters, which were in Kaliningrad. It's the last place where you want to go with a luxurious vessel. Running to Kaliningrad was, according to me, very significant. It meant that Putin knew that action probably been taken against his vessel.
It all centers on the collapse of the Soviet Union. A small group of shrewd businessmen rushed in to take advantage of the privatization of massive state companies.
Researchers estimate that in 2015, the hidden foreign wealth of rich Russians amounted to around 85% of Russia's GDP.
Vladimir Putin, the way he has farmed out his money is he holds it through different oligarchs.
Oligarchs are very important because if they turn against Putin, Putin is in trouble. He needs them, and he needs them to be happy.
Since 2005, 42 private vessels over 100 meters were built. Of these 42, 14 were of Russian oligarchs. Melnichenko is probably one of the biggest success stories in this list.
The Italian authorities in the port of Trieste seized the ship known as Sailing Yachty.
He went public the day after arguing against the war in Ukraine. So surely these sanctions have some effect. I use open source techniques to track Russian oligarchs' vessels. Each vessel, especially those over a certain size, needs to have something that's akin to a transponder. It sends small amounts of data about its name, its heading, location, and movements. This data is completely free to intercept, and radio stations on the ground will collect this data and use it to avoid collisions. One of the best sources of data for vessels, it's a website called marinetraffic.com. There is a FleetMon website, plus the more bureaucratic aspect of the tracking, which means ownership data, registration data, etc., equasis.org. I also developed some custom tools which allow me to track multiple vessels at the same time. Being interested in the subject, probably I started collecting data in 2016. Basically, cross-referencing the data between various articles, checking and verifying data with some databases of vessel ownership, and I was slowly able to grow a list of oligarchs and yachts. I'm putting it all together with graphics in something that would be easy to consume by the public and would be shareable on social media, and hoped it helped getting the attention of the public and getting the public to put some kind of pressure on the governments. Looking at the general economics of the world, you can see that Russia is not a particularly rich country. It has not a developed economy, but absurdly, almost 1/3 of the biggest yachts in the world belong to their ruling class.
Russia's billionaires control roughly 30% of the wealth within Russia.
It's quite telling of how much the Russian population got robbed by the regime and the government. If you go outside of Moscow, you can see extreme poverty and lack of basic services. There are roads that are terrible, hospitals that don't work, schools that no funding, etc., etc.
Desolation and decay here, but this has become an all too common sight across rural Russia.
More than 20 million Russians are living below the poverty line.
And in contrast to this, you see these oligarchs which own the biggest amount of yachts in the world, which have a fleet of private planes, which is impressive. There is a huge contrast basically between this ruling class in Russia and the regular Russian people.